And so I learned very quickly from him and from many others too, that coaching and the game is just a metaphor for life when it comes to things like adversity and failure and ups and downs of it. And so when you can look at it through that lens, it has really helped me.
Welcome to the Keep Baseball Great podcast, where we're all about reminding baseball fans why they love the game. In this episode, we're going to talk with Coach Matt Lisle, who, if you don't know who Coach Lisle is, he's coached from T-ball all the way up to the MLB and really everything in between in the baseball and softball world. His passion for the game and his experience on and off the field just makes him a great fit for what Keep Baseball Great is all about. In the episode, we get to hear how his childhood and family has shaped his love for baseball. We also get to hear some of the fun stories he has with his friends growing up. Plus, if you stick around to the end, we get to hear what he has coming up next for parents and athletes, so you don't want to miss that. So, without further ado, here's our episode with Coach Lisle. Well, hey, Matt, thanks so much for joining me on the Keep Baseball Great podcast. I know it's a privilege for me to kind of talk with you today because I know a little bit about your story and kind of how it resonates with me, but it's just great to have you on.
Hey, thanks, Drew. I appreciate it having me on.
Of course. So I know I have personally been following you online for a while. I have a son who is in 14U baseball. And so
Nice.
I know the message and the things you put out really kind of resonate with me. And it's just kind of a refreshing take from, probably what I would say the normal coach or the normal uh, informational baseball guy online is. So it was refreshing for me. And so I know a lot of people probably resonate also with that because I know your story is amazing. You've got 700,000 plus people following you. So there is something about you that people grab onto, and I can attest to that. But so real quick, just for our listeners, tell us a little bit about you, kind of what you do, and really why you're doing what you do.
Yeah, so I probably should work on a quick way to say all that stuff. But for me, I think the best way to describe me is, I'm a father of five, and I'm the oldest of seven kids. So for me, family and kids and sports has always been something really important to me. And so my grandfather coached in college for 38 years. My dad coached, and then I got into coaching. So I've been coaching for 21 years now at every level from I coached Little League, travel ball, high school, NAIA, D1. I've coached in the Pac-12, the SEC. I've coached at the Major League Baseball level. I've literally coached every single level you could
That's
think of,
amazing.
even T-ball in the last couple of years. So, my journey and just experience, the best way to encapsulate me is a coach who really tries to find his identity in being a father and a husband, and trying to mix all those things together. I think for me has been what social media has been for me. I think we were talking the other day that I'm going to cross probably 1 million followers in the next month or so. And it's people ask me why that is. And I think it's because all of my social media sharing that I've done for many years, it speaks to who I am as a father, husband, coach, person, and trying to share that life. And I just think a lot of people out there resonate with that, being a parent and navigating athletics and coaching and stuff like that. So I've been very fortunate to be able to do that and learn from some great people and share that knowledge. So and that's kind of me in a nutshell.
No, that's fantastic. I know, for me in my journey, it was, I have a son. He's born. Okay. I've always loved baseball, played a little bit. But he ends up enjoying it and starts playing. And so you get into this, like, I don't know what you call it, but you just get in this rhythm of, okay, this is getting way more serious than it needs to be. And he's 8U, 7U at the time. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So there was a time for me where it was like fun, serious, way too serious, uh, over the top. And now I'm kind of like, I kind of see that in myself, saw that in other people. And now I'm kind of back down of like, he's 14U. He still loves to play and has some high school aspirations playing. And so now I'm finding that balance of uh, being a dad, being encouraging, but also pushing him and just trying for him to be the best he can be. So uh, I love that about you. I love that that journey that you've been on, and so we'll talk more about later how people can find and read more about your story. But I love it. So one quick thing, because of how keep baseball great. It's all about just having fun. But I've also seen parents and coaches just go crazy. Tell me just real quick a little bit about your book, Dear Coach, because I saw this and I was like, oh my gosh, this has got to be some great stories in this thing. But tell us a little bit
Oh
about
my
that.
gosh. So my dad's still mad at me about it, but for probably 10 years, probably 20 years, my dad has always said, I'm going to write a book about all the parent emails that I've gotten. And my dad coached Little League in high school for 30 plus years. And so, he really dealt with like the young kids and parents. And in the last 10 years, he kept saying, I'm going to write a book about all these emails that I got. And we always talk about, and I have a bunch of them too. And
Yeah.
so I just decided, you know what, I'm going to put on Facebook now that I have a lot of followers, share with me your crazy parent emails, and I'm going to choose 30 of them, and I'm going to put them in a book. And so I got like 100 entries. I spent a lot of time going through them, and there's so many great stories, but we narrowed them down to like 30. And I hired an incredible illustrator named Wes Molbash, who we decided the idea would be to share the email, and on the other side of the page, a comic illustration of that story. And Wes did an incredible job of it. So the book is a collection of emails and crazy stories. And then I also have some commentary, and they're like, hey, if I received this email, this is how I would have responded and tried to, right the ship a little bit. And so I talked a little bit about that, but I mean, there's some just crazy, crazy stories in there of parents. And so, like I said, I give my dad all the credit for the idea of it. And we finally got it out there and did it. And last summer, and it was really cool. It's been fun to see parents and people respond to it and the crazy stories. And, so it was a fun book. It's called Dear Coach. You can find it on Amazon.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can't wait to get my copy on that. So that'll be good. Well, cool. So Keep Baseball Great always asks our guest these 5 questions, and I've kind of narrowed this down to like, okay, if someone asked me, why do you love baseball so much? And there's a lot of answers and a lot of things to that, but I kind of narrowed it down like, here's 5 staples that I believe kind of really summarize why I love baseball, and everything kind of falls in between that. So I love asking people these questions, and kind of I know with your background and kind of what you've gone through, I'm excited to hear some of these. So you ready?
Yep.
All right. So the first one is just all about history. And a lot of people ask, is this personal history? Is this baseball history? It can be, whatever it is for you. It doesn't matter. But what are some of your favorite baseball historical moments, and why?
For me, I'll tell you what, my mom, when I was a kid, my mom we used to take, in the Bay Area, there's a thing called BART. It's like a train, like in New York and other places like subway. And it takes you straight to the Oakland Coliseum. And so we went to a lot of A's games, my mom and I would sit right. And back in the Oakland Coliseum in the old days, the outfield fence used to go right down to the field, and I would sit in the left field bleachers for like $3 a ticket, and I would sit and root for Rickey Henderson. And so Rickey Henderson is my favorite player of all time. So for me, just growing up, when he broke the stolen base record and was lifting that base up, those are some of my greatest memories. What's funny is, as much as I've probably spoken out against the steroid era, I vividly remember it was right after I graduated high school, the McGuire Sosa race. And I just remember I remember a lot of time talking with my dad about that. Like, did he hit the home run today? And Sunday night baseball, watching the games with my dad and seeing, as it got closer and closer. So for me, those are some history. I'll tell you from a history standpoint, the story that I'm most fascinated with in the entire story of baseball is the 8 men out
Mm.
story and the Black Sox scandal. If I could go back in time, Shoeless Joe Jackson just is so much fascinates me, and that World Series and the throwing of the game. I'm just so curious to hear what the real story is and all the things that happened to me. So for some reason growing up, I think I saw that movie. Maybe I was a little bit younger, and I just was always fascinated with that and fascinated with Shoeless Joe Jackson. To me, a lot of the history that I'm really fascinated with is guys that didn't, like Satchel Paige and Jackie Robinson, guys that I'm curious, like what would their careers, it's Shoeless Joe Jackson, that their careers had been like if they had played, an entire career.
Right.
And so for me, some of those kind of stories are really fascinating when it comes to history.
Yeah, no, that's great. I do going back to the McGuire and Sosha. I remember watching that as a kid. I was gosh, I don't know. I mean, I was fairly old, middle school maybe, but I remember watching that, but not really understanding. And so I watched the 30 for 30. I think it was a
Yeah.
30 for 30 on it, and I was like, oh my gosh, like being in the middle of that and watching that, and then seeing the hindsight, it's just amazing.
Well, it was so interesting because the strike had happened a couple of years earlier, and a
Right.
lot of people were really upset about baseball, and baseball had taken a pretty good hit in the late '90s, and so. And like from a record standpoint, back then, a lot of records weren't really being broken. So that home run record was so elusive for so long that as the Sosa McGuire were getting closer and closer, it created this huge buzz. And I think it's just so funny how big the buzz was, how much we talked about them. And there was no social media back then. I can't imagine what it would have been like nowadays with social media and just the craziness of the world.
Yeah. No kidding. That's awesome. Yeah, and I love those like you said, those guys that played back in the day, but because of the war, because of some other things, just didn't get to play a full season. And you're like, man, I bet they one, a ton of fun to watch, but then two, to be able to see them a full career would have been awesome. But that's awesome. So you touched a little bit about this, about going to the A's games, but the second question is all about family and friends. So uh, what kind of special moments do you share with your family and friends through baseball?
I was very fortunate that in the year 2000, I was a young guy, and a buddy of mine got a job as the out-of-town scoreboard operator for the Oakland A's.
Nice.
And I begged him and begged him and begged him. And in June of 2000, he got me a job at the out-of-town scoreboard. So for 17 years, I did the out-of-town scoreboard for the Oakland A's.
Wow.
And the memories, we were in Sports Illustrated one year. They featured us in the out-of-town scoreboard. And on the cover of some newspapers, and they did a lot of articles on us throughout the years. And we were there for Hatterberg's walk-off to win the 20th straight game. Okay. So I shared all those. And so throughout the early 2000s, myself and my buddy, we got all of our friends jobs as people kind of moved on to other jobs. So at some point in the middle 2000s, like our entire group of friends that grew up together were all working the scoreboard field together and sharing games and playoffs, cool. and stuff together. So for me, that was a big part of that era for me, getting to share a lot of memories with friends at A's games like that. And for me, and with family, again, like I'm the oldest of 7 kids. I have one brother who has Down syndrome, but the other 6 of us all played college sports. 4 played college baseball, 2 played college soccer. And so, for me, all my family memories, I feel like growing up, and even now, my sister's a high school soccer coach now, and my brothers have coached in high school as well. So, we just continue to have memories around sports.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can't imagine. I'd love to be a fly on the wall with you and all your buddies at the out-of-town score.
Oh, we even today, most of our memories are 15, 20 years old on our text threads and our group get-togethers. I mean, we're just sharing the same stories over and over again.
That's awesome. I love that. Well, the next question kind of has to do with life lessons. And I know you share a lot about life lessons through baseball. So give us just real quick some of your favorite life lessons that you've been able to learn through baseball.
For me, I got to meet him a couple of times and talk with him. He passed away. Augie Garrido, one of the greatest coaches of all time. I really studied him as younger coach, and I realized that he had, most winningest coach in college baseball history. But if you really studied him, most of his talking was never about like the X's and O's in the game. It was very psychological. It was very relationship based, and so I learned very quickly from him and from many others too that coaching in the game is just a metaphor for life when it comes to things like adversity and failure and the ups and downs of it. And so when you can look at it through that lens, it has really helped me. So from as a coach standpoint, like I'm a super sarcastic guy, way too much. And I get that from my dad and my family, and we're competitive. But I know as a coach, empathy serves me a lot better in my coaching world. And so, and the same thing was just like dealing with adversity. Like a baseball is a game with a lot of failure and a lot of adversity. And if you don't know how to deal with it, the game can kind of eat you up no matter how good you are. So for me, a lot of the life lessons that I have learned are around, dealing with adversity, the ups and downs of it. I think, I've had some really painful defeats in my career and losses. And I think without those losses where you couldn't sleep at night, like the wins that you get are not as sweet when you get them. So like and I think the same thing in life. Like, I've been to some, moments. I think everyone has some to rock bottom moments.
Yeah.
And I think that when you're on the other side of those things, you appreciate those so much more when you do. And so to me, the game is just, again, it's just a metaphor for life in general. I think that's why, and I think a lot of sports is that way, but for me and my journey in baseball, it has very much been the case that the parallels are the same. And I think for a lot of coaches and people in it, they would say the same.
Yeah, and that's definitely, this is one thing I picked up way too late with my son, uh, because earlier on with his, trying to teach him baseball, it was all fundamentals and skill and all this, and so I picked up way too late on all the life lessons I could have been teaching him throughout the thing now. So I'm like pounding him now with a lot of that stuff, uh, but it's just an incredible thing that I think a lot of people miss out on. Whether they're a parent or a coach. I go to these tournaments with my son, and just some of the coaches that I see, I'm just like, man, it's hard to watch. But
Yeah.
so
And I think the biggest difference, the issue that I have seen a lot is like when I was growing up, we played out in the street with our friends till the lights came on and played wiffle ball in the backyard. Like there were days that I threw a tennis ball against in a little like white square on the garage door for hours and fielded balls off that for hours. And I loved it. And I think that over the last 15 years or so, the fun of baseball has been taken away with travel ball and some of the demands of it. And so for me, parents have forgotten, hey, we really focus on the fundamentals, the travel ball, all the things. They really have forgotten that when you focus on all those things, you have to be really intentional about putting the fun into it. So
yeah.
If it's not scheduled in there. So, the tides have shifted. And so now a lot of my talk with coaches is like, in your practice plan, how much fun is really incorporated in that. You could have the best practice plan in the world for like a 14U travel team. And maybe you guys, everyone's worked hard, really great. And it's great, but there has to be actual fun involved in that. And I think that's some of the issues we're having now in the game is that kids, when they play in the backyard, they create rules and they have fun with all that kinds of different things. And when the parents take over and the coaches take over, if they're not intentional about that, making sure there's that fun, it can get not fun very fast.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. So our fourth question is giving back. And so what I've kind of seen through, whether it's MLB guys using their platform, giving back, or whether it's me as a little league coach being able to give back my time, that's just a big part of baseball for me. And that's just what I see. But have you ever been able to be a part of giving back through baseball, or someone giving back to you through baseball in such a way that just made you remember it?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, and I think a lot of coaches is they recognize the people that poured into them, and
Mm,
I think of the coaches that I grew up with, that some of them I still talk to, and some of my mentors that if they hadn't really poured into me their knowledge and love and relationship, like I wouldn't be the person that I am. So if I've been shaped that way, I have to pay that forward and helping shape other people and finding ways to give back. And so my Dear Coach book that I did, 100% of the proceeds go to an organization called The Base. I don't make a single dime off that book. That was just an idea that we had for that book. And for me, it was really fun. A few years ago, I partnered with an organization called I Love Baseball, who donates a lot of stuff to in the Dominican Republic to kids. And we did a free camp, and I got like 15 really good high school and college coaches together. And we had over 100 kids come to this camp, and we spent a half a day with them. And when you can do those type of things, I think it's funny because I think a lot of people don't realize the how much it fills you up when you do those things. I think a lot of people, they serve and give back for different reasons, but when you actually do it and you see the faces of the people that you're helping, and so for me, the same thing with, I was a young coach at one point, and I know I still talk to a lot of my younger assistant coaches that I had over the years, and still have relationships with them. And I know that my relationship with them is not just as a buddy. It is trying to help them become a better coach and grow in their career, and just like somebody did with me. So it's to me, if you ask me what's my favorite part about the baseball game and the game itself is the community of people, and the brotherhood, the mentors. There's people, there's coaches out there from Coach Corbin at Vanderbilt, Rick Heller at Iowa. I mean, I can just name dozens and dozens of coaches who have to some degree been willing to help me or listen to me or share with me, and you can't find that in a lot of other vocations.
Yeah, no, that's so true. So my wife is a middle school coach, and so yeah, and she's phenomenal. She, you have to be a special person to love middle school kids sometimes. But
I taught middle school for a couple of years. It's tough.
It is, man. But she loves it, and I say this because I've started to gauge how good of a coach you are by how many people how many kids that you've coached throughout the years have come back and talked to you or reached out to you. And she constantly has girls that are now graduated, and moved on, that are just reaching back out and, saying hi on Facebook or whatever. But it's the same, kind of like what you were saying, just when you pour into kids and give back in such a way that it's that memorable, they're going to stick around. They're going to want to reach back out to you. And I've started to gauge how good of a coach you are just on that. So
yeah, it's definitely, it's weird and fun as you get older. Again, like I go to lunch with one of my former players every once in a while, and we and I'm like, how many years ago was that? I'm thinking, and then they're old now, but you always picture them as they were, as this young person too. So just one of the fun parts of getting old as a coach.
Yeah, that is the downfall. You realize how old you're getting by
yes.
how old they're getting. But well, that's great. So our last question, we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but it's just the fun of baseball. Like you said, when we were kids, playing out in the street, just doing what we do and have fun. But what are some the most fun moments you've had through baseball?
Oh man, I look back to those, like I said, my best memories as a kid was wiffle ball games in the backyard with my family or my younger brother, in competing. And same thing when we lived in a cul-de-sac that had 20 kids out playing all the different games, 2-hand football, and all the hide and go seek. So we were very fortunate growing up, and the just amount of kids were around and playing that. My 12-year-old little league team went to the championship of our regional, and that was really exciting. And so for me, there's just little memories here and there that which is funny. And if you look. If you look right here, this trophy right here.
Okay.
This trophy, I have lots and lots of trophies, but this trophy right here is a home plate, and it is a consolation championship trophy, a fifth place trophy. And I took a 16U travel ball team of guys who were not elite, and we went to Disney World for 7 days. And I will tell you, it was the most fun trip of my life as a coach, young coach. And that, I was probably 25 back then. I'm not sure, maybe 28. So, and we fought our way through this bracket. We won the Constellation Championship, and that trophy is probably one of my most prized possessions. Not because of the trophy itself, but like that week, if you talk to those kids, my younger brother, I was a freshman on that team in high school, and he's in his 30s now. Like, they will tell you that was the greatest week of our lives. That's awesome. And so for me, I would say that's a memory that I'll always hold. And it was literally, again, like a 16U travel ball team that we put together of kids in the neighborhood and stuff that wanted to play. And we're like, we're going to go to Disney World and we're going to play there for 7 days in this tournament against all these teams. And we had a blast. And so for me, I have a lot of those type of memories of traveling to places and memories like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. I love that the trophy is up there. I mean, that's, it's a little blurry, but it looks like that's the only trophy on those.
Yeah, so I said it's the only trophy on display.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, man, thanks so much just for kind of sharing a little bit about you and kind of your love for baseball. And I know it's real fun for me to kind of hear these stories, and it shapes a little bit about me about how to, lead my son too. But before we go, tell listeners, where can we find you? I know you've got a lot going on. Like we said, the book, you do speaking, there's some workshops, and the Hitting Vault too, which is a big thing. So tell us a little bit where they can find you and what they can do.
Yeah, I would say the things that I'm pouring my most time into right now are the Hitting Vault. And if you Google the Hitting Vault or hittingvault.com, is my hitting website. And we've really put a lot of time, energy into that. And the newest project that I'm working on that just got done and has been put out is called recruitedinsider.com. And so if you go to recruitedinsider.com, I put together a recruiting course for parents that is what I would call the real talk of recruiting, what college coaches are really looking for. I wanted to give parents something that they could see, hey, this is what's really out there. This is what really college coaches are doing, because they hear so much stuff from travel ball coaches and parents and social media, like what they should be doing, that I put together a course that said, hey, parents, this is what college coaches are actually doing, and how they actually approach recruiting and what you need to do to get noticed and how to do that. So I put together a course for that. So those are the two best ways. I mean, you can follow me on social media at Coach Lisle on all different platforms, but the hittingvault.com and recruitedinsider.com are the two projects that I've been really pouring my most time into this year.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I have an older daughter who's going to be a junior in high school. She plays volleyball. And so we're now getting into that recruiting process because she really wants to play college. And oh my gosh, you are spot on in terms of what we're getting fed as far as the recruiting process. So I will definitely check that out. But like I said, thanks so much for just taking the time to join us, and look forward to following you online.
Thanks for having me on, Drew.
Of course. Well, thanks for tuning in to our episode with Coach Lisle. Just like always, I love hearing the stories and different things that people just love about baseball. And it's no different with Coach Lisle. I know his passion and love for the game shows in many ways. And so be sure to check out recruitedinsider.com and thehittingvault.com. And then you can follow at Coach Lisle online also. So thanks again for listening to the Keep Baseball Great podcast, and we'll catch you next time.